Children, the story of the Indian independence struggle, era of Gandhi, the period from 1920 to 1947, we regard it as the era of Gandhiji. 1885, the Indian National Congress was founded by Mr. A.O. Hume. From 1885 to 1920, that was a period when a lot of preparations went on in the country. The first 20 years are considered to be the period of the moderates. The next 15 years we consider it as the period of the radicals. But from 1920 onwards, Gandhiji's appearance on the scene brought about a marked change. Gandhiji guided, directed and controlled. He was a leader of the masses. His slogans were catchy. His philosophy was contemptuous, very strong. And he was a model for anyone to reckon with. People found a great enigma in this individual, Mahatma Gandhi. Let's just have a brief count of his life. He was born in the year 1869 on the 2nd of October. Even today, we celebrate his birthday as Gandhi Jayanti. His full name was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, M.K. Gandhi. People world over called him Bapu out of sheer love. They had a fatherly figure in him. He was born at Porbandar. Porbandar is in the Kathiawar district of Gujarat. His mother was Putli Bai. Father was Karamchand. Karamchand was Diwan of Kathiawar district. Putli Bai was a woman of great moral values. She was a religious woman. Father used to be away from the house. So Mohandas came under the influence of his mother, Putli Bai. I told you already, she was a great woman, a great religious woman. So she was the woman who inspired him on various moral counts. To take an example, Gandhiji used to go on long fasts for 10 days, 12 days, sometimes even 21 days. For any human being, it was a very difficult proposition. But Gandhiji used to do it with ease because he had drawn that inspiration from his mother. His mother had been the model. She used to undergo fasting every now and then. Weekly fastings were there. Whenever festivals were there like Dasara and all, she used to go on long fasts. And Gandhiji used to join her. And she inspired him from this angle. primary and secondary education he had in Porbandar. He continued his education later. Then in 1888, he decides to go to England for higher studies. He wanted to do Barrett law. So he was guided by elders to go to England and pursue his education. Again, his mother takes a vow from Gandhiji to be disciplined when he is in England. She tells him and takes a vow that he will keep himself away from meat. He will keep himself away from liquor. He will keep himself away from meat, liquor and women. And Gandhiji vows and sticks on to that vow when he was in England. 1893, he comes back, finishes Barrett law, and after coming to India, he was told to go to South Africa and join the Abdullah and Company at Natal, South Africa. He served that company, accountants, they were accountants and auditors. He served that company for a period of 20 years. He used to fight quite a few legal cases that the company had taken over. He used to fight for his clients. There in South Africa, he had to face the wrath of the apartheid. You know, South Africa was known for the crisis between the blacks and whites. The natives of Africa were blacks, whereas their rulers who had come from Europe, especially Britain, they were all white. The whites considered blacks as slaves. They were not being regarded as human beings even. And these blacks had to live outside the town. They were not permitted to stay in the town even. They had to stay outside the town. They were not permitted to travel in vehicles in which the whites used to travel. They were not permitted to use shops, hotels, or schools where whites used to study or trade. Even the toilets, public toilets, used to have a board saying that it is only for whites, and separate toilets were there for blacks and dogs. They used to put the board like that. Toilet for the Negroes and the dogs. You can make out how did they regard the blacks as? Blacks were virtually slaves from their viewpoint. And there, once an event happens. Gandhiji was travelling by a train. In a hurry, he had entered first class. He would change in the next station. But the whites were not able to tolerate the presence of a black in a train compartment. They pushed him down. His luggage was thrown on the platform. Gandhiji got humiliated. That humiliation then in South Africa brought the real Gandhi out of Mohandas. Till then he was Mohandas. He knew English. He was good at his academic jobs. But the real Gandhiji whom we see later, he came out of Mohandas. prevailed later. So that's an interesting, tragic episode that brought about a change in Gandhiji. From there onwards, he invents ways and means of protesting against apartheid. This friction between the whites and the blacks is what is called as apartheid. Blacks were being looked down upon. They are not being regarded as human beings even. So what did Gandhiji invent? He invented Satyagraha. I have to set an example to the entire world. I have to fight for Satya. When Gandhiji was young, he had seen 2 drama episodes. He had read the stories. One was Satya Chandra, the other one was Shravan Kumar. Both these had cast a lot of influence on the mind of Gandhiji. And he decides to stand for truth. He regarded that truth alone triumphs ultimately. So Satyagraha, he accepts it as his life theme. What was the other one? Non-violence. Whatever I want to achieve in life, whatever I like to fight for the humanity, I will do it non-violently. Non-violently. I'll stand for ahimsa. See, the preachings of Buddha had made a lot of impact on Gandhiji. Truth and non-violence, Satyagraha, assertion for Satya, and leading a life where non-violence prevails, ahimsa prevails, became his watchwords in life. So this is a new form of protest. Non-violently fight for Satya. He started Natal Indian Congress, a political party. He started bringing out a periodical by name Indian Opinion. He used to write in the periodical. 1915, he comes back to India. He was called back. Here the freedom struggle had been taking a clear shape. People were enthusiastic to throw the British out, to assert their position and rights here, but they did not have the right leaders. So people in Mumbai, they welcomed Gandhiji as he alighted the ship and stepped on the Indian soil. He had a gala welcome. And from there onwards, we see Gandhiji blooming into a great leader. He knew what he had to do. He knew his path. And he was not one to deter. He was very strong within himself. He even gives up his normal dress. He wears just a small loin cloth around his waist with a shawl on his shoulder. And he says, I don't have a right to wear clothes to cover my entire body so far as till the last person in India gets the needed clothes. He starts an ashram on the banks of river Sabarmati in Gujarat. It's known as Sabarmati Ashram. Even today, it's an icon of Gandhiji's life. People of all different castes used to come, stay there, they stayed together. That's the world in itself. And even the clothes that the ashram vasis wear, they had to be woven, they had to be made with the help of charaka there. Gandhiji used to get his clothes spun himself on the charaka and wear. And food used to be very simple, very simple. and every morning and evening they had prayers. And Gandhiji would address ashram vasis there. So volunteers got trained who had a major responsibility on their shoulders with regard to the Indian freedom later on. They all got trained up there. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Jawaharlal Nehru. They were all, right from younger age, they served Gandhiji. They were with Gandhiji. Gandhiji brought them up, groomed them into great beings. And after Gandhiji came to India, his guru had been Gopal Krishna Gokhale, a masterly person, a well-read person. He guides, he tells Gandhiji, the first job you have to do now, go around India and just study what is India. Try to know about India. Gandhiji, keeping up the words of Gokhale, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he goes round the country and studies inch by inch. He tries to know what is the actual India mean. 1916, he started Sabarmati Ashram. 1917, he goes and joins Champaran movement in Bihar. In Bihar, indigo growers, they were fighting for rights. Heavy taxes they had to pay. So he went there and supported the indigo growers. Indigo was a color that was required at the initial stage of the textile industry. The clothes had to be colored initially and indigo was being used. It was a very powerful medium that the textile industry wanted. And Europe never grew indigo there, it had to go from India. 1918, he supported mill workers in Ahmedabad. Mill workers, they were going on strike and he went and guided them. He led them. Khadi was the cloth that came into being later on. That's also what Gandhiji promoted. Hand-spun clothes. Kheda was the place where the mills were there, where he opposed the heavy taxation by the British. Almost at this juncture, the freedom struggle was about to take over. Now here, to begin with, it was passive resistance. Everywhere people started resisting against the British rule in India. Congress started Tilak Swarajya Fund. Funds were required. Money was required for the ongoing struggle. So, Tilak Swarajya Fund was created. Gandhiji insisted on the unity between the Hindus and Muslims. He always had that feeling inside. These two communities may have a divide in between. It should not happen. So far as these two communities are together, India will be very strong. So whatever basic structure he had to prepare within the Congress, he devoted a lot of time for that. He always regarded Hindus and Muslims as two eyes of Mother India. Two eyes of Mother India. Now at this juncture, 1919, a great incident took place in Punjab. The place was Jallianwala Bagh. Let's see what induced this situation or event in Jallianwala Bagh. The British implemented an act called Rowlatt Act. Rowlatt Act. That was in 1919. As per the Rowlatt Act, the British government had sweeping powers, absolute powers to arrest any person and put him in jail. Without much inquiry, any individual whom they feel a threat to their regime in India, they can arrest and put in jail. An illegal act. Lots of innocents too may have to spend months and years in jail. People get tortured. People will not have faith in themselves there. So this Rowlatt Act had to be opposed. Gandhiji opposed the Rowlatt Act. Without court inquiry, you cannot make a person and call him offender. People cannot assemble even in large numbers. You cannot have rallies. You cannot have meetings. Now this became the practice of the day. Gandhiji opposed it. Freedom of expression was withdrawn. They felt India is slowly trying to test freedom. At this juncture itself, we have to pluck the bud and throw it away. People protested now everywhere. Huge public marches started. Gandhiji called for Haratal. What's Haratal? What do you call it a strike now? Strike. Strikes were common everywhere. Boycotts. They started boycotting the British officers. The British orders were getting ignored. People started neglecting the British. April 9th, 1919, Gandhiji called for a huge hartal. Oppose this government. The legislations of this government are illegal. Let us oppose. He gave a call for people's unity, irrespective of the religion or caste or creed. He gave a clarion call for all people to come together and wage their voice. Dr. Fakhruddin and Satyapal, there were two great personalities who were supporting the policy of Gandhiji. They were arrested. April 13th, 1919, April 13th, people had assembled in a fort at Jallianwala Bagh for a peaceful protest. People were not violent. They were getting guided properly by Congress leaders. People had gathered in large numbers inside the fort of Jallianwala Bagh, and a British police officer by name General Dyer, a man without a foresight, he brought his forces, police forces. They were mounted police. They were horses, sitting on horses. They were brought inside the fort. They covered it on all sides. The gates were closed and order was given to fire at the innocent people. The people included men, women and children. There's total confusion and chaos inside the fort. There was a dried up well. Lots of women jumped into the well. They did not know where to go. The gates too were closed. And the police went on a rampage. Such a situation was unheard of till then in the Indian history, in the annals of Indian history. It came as a rude shock to the entire nation. Hundreds of people died. Thousands of people got injured. There was bloodshed all over. Now, there was a flare-up. The entire freedom struggle had a flare-up. What's flare-up? The issues started burning everywhere. There's absolute chaos in the country, especially in northern India. Rabindranath Tagore, he gave back the knighthood to the British government. Knighthood. he had been awarded, decorated with knighthood by the British government, he gave it back. He refused. All these are insults to the British government. Non-cooperation movement started everywhere. And Michael O. Dyer, the police official, was responsible for killing of the people. He was killed by Udham Singh. Udham Singh, a revolutionary. In the meanwhile, in Turkey, a movement had started. Turkey, it is on the western side of the Asian continent, and Turkey was being ruled by Caliph. Sultan of Turkey was Caliph. He was a religious leader. He was a political leader of Turkey and was a religious leader too. Caliph. And one Caliph after the other, they take over the throne. That was the process. But in the First World War, Britain harassed Caliph. Caliph was harassed, and this was opposed by the people of Turkey. There was wide protest everywhere in Turkey. And in India, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, they opposed what had happened in Turkey then. So the British had to face this wrath from Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Gandhi supported the movement. He thought, this is the period we should help the Muslims now. Support the issue in Turkey, thereby the Muslims will join the national stream. They joined the Congress in large numbers. It happened. There was a countrywide protest and Hindus and Muslims came together. So that was the Khilafat movement. Khilafat movement actually helped Gandhiji to bring the Hindus and Muslims together. Hindus and Muslims started learning each other, knowing each other. They felt if we come together, we will be a great force to reckon with. Let us continue in the next video.